All right. Brian, do we have quorum?
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you. Good afternoon. With quorum present, the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Board meeting is now called to order. Please turn on your microphone when speaking and mute when not speaking. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under the COC's jurisdiction. If you'd like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card by the door and give it to MAG staff. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available by the door. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. Brian, would you like to take roll call? Please share your name and that you're here and the organization you represent after Brian calls your name.
Letitia Brown Gambino.
Present.
Tim Birch. Jessica Cruz. We see you.
There we go. Audio problem. Hi, I'm here. Thank you. NAC.
Liz DaCosta.
Hello, Liz DaCosta here with Access.
Chris Hallett.
Hi, Chris Hallett, City of Peoria.
Michael Hughes. Jessica Raymond. TJ Reed.
Present from Maricopa County.
Charles Sullivan.
Hi, Charles Sullivan from ABC.
Sienna Valdez. Cricket Weatherington.
Present AHI.
Danielle Wright. Co-chair Rachel Milne.
Present City of Phoenix.
Co-chair Vicki Phillips.
Vicki Phillips, Community Bridges. Thank you, Brian. All right, the next item on the agenda is a call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under the Continuum of Care Board and that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. Brian, were there any comments received or anyone who wishes to offer comments at this time?
There were no public comments received, and I don't believe anybody is offering public comment.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Our next item is approval of the consent agenda items through A through 3C. These are on the agenda for consent. Does any member of the board have any questions, comments, or request a presentation on any of these items?
Co-chair, apologies, it should be 3A through 3D.
Oh, 3D. My apologies. 3A through 3D. Take that as a no request. All right. Does any member of the public wish to comment on any of the items on the consent agenda? May I have a motion to approve consent items 3A through 3D?
This is Rachel. I move to approve consent agenda items 3A through 3D.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Mike Hughes, I second.
All right. Rachel, thank you for your first, and Michael Hughes, thank you for your second. Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion from the board or any comments from the public? All right. For those in the room, we will take a voice vote. Those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, please say nay. Okay. I will now ask Brian to proceed with a roll call of those joining online.
Charles Sullivan.
Yay.
Letitia Brown Gambino.
Yay.
Liz DaCosta.
Yay.
Chris Hallett.
Yay.
Jessica Cruz.
Yay.
TJ Reed.
Yay.
Very well, the motion passes. We'll be moving on to the next agenda item. We have a NOFO update. The next item is really an update from MAG staff related to the forthcoming HUD NOFO. Staff will also discuss goals for the ranking review process.
Thank you, Co-Chair Phillips. Hi, everyone. Dylan Belmont with MAG here, joined by my colleague Cleo Warner. It's that time. Once again, the foundational reason that we are all in this room today, soon enough, the people in this room and online are going to be deciding, how we allocate more than $40 million to homeless service providers in our region. So the purpose of today's presentation is figuring out just what guidance the board wants to give to the rank and review panelists that'll be evaluating these applications, and looking at some context as to what kind of information is helpful to making those decisions. So this should be a refresher for most, but the annual notice of funding opportunity provided by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development seeks to support local communities throughout the country, ours included here in Maricopa, to address homelessness. What this funding looks like is primarily in the form of housing programs. So you can see that, well over 85% of the funding that we received with the last cycle went to both permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. It also supports our system infrastructure, meaning HMIS and coordinated entry, as well as continuum of care planning efforts. More information about the NOFO is always online on the MAG website, azmag.gov/homelessness/NOFO. This is where applicants go to review the scorecard, where they go to access the portal for the application itself. Now, just because it's coming up in today's meeting doesn't mean that this process started today. It's basically a year-round thing. You may recall a few months ago in March, we came to the board to approve the scorecards for the local project applications. This is when a lot of the planning takes place, right? Everything that MAG staff is able to do before the NOFO actually gets released, it's done early to make sure that there's ample time for the actual applications themselves to be created. This is the period we're in now, early summer before the NOFO actually drops, where renewal applicants are able to go in, submit all of their performance data so they can be evaluated ahead of time, as well as providing the foundation for new projects so they can be prepared as soon as it releases. Then sometime between this purple dot in the middle and the blue one on the right, the stars will align and the ancient secrets will be revealed and the NOFO will actually be released by HUD. And from that point, this is like when it really kicks into high gear and what we're preparing for today. So of course, MAG staff hosts an informational session that provides all of the assistance necessary to potentially agencies who have never applied for the NOFO, or maybe they don't even know what the continuum of care is. From that point, as new applicants submit their information, eventually a group of community members will meet to evaluate all of these applications, renewals and new applications. They come back to you all with a priority listing of projects, which essentially ranks all of those that applied and determines, in case there were more projects than funding available, just who gets funded. So the crux of today's presentation is highlighted now. How does the rank and review know what to evaluate for? This is determined by the board, ultimately, what direction is given to these community members in addition to the performance data that already exists. So Cleo, question for you is what's the deal with that? Where do we, yeah.
I'm so glad you asked, Dylan. I'm Cleo with MAG. So each year, Dylan and I help oversee this rank and review process. And as was mentioned, it is this group of community members who, we're moving towards this very transparent process of who we get in the room. They're people who are non-conflicted. They're not applying for funding or a subrecipient of this funding. They have an understanding of grant processes and grant review processes. They have lived experience. They represent a diversity of perspectives from our community. Usually incredible group of people that we get together and forced to be in a room for 4 days.
Always an incredible
Always.
group of people, Cleo.
People, thank you.
So
for the
can I ask
clarification.
you a question?
Yes, Michael.
How are they selected?
So we basically have the previous rank and review members. This is sort of a newer process. Get together and review information that people submitted from the community who were interested in becoming part of the rank and review panel. So we send it out, we say, hey, we're looking for members. People submit info. The previous group sort of assesses that. And then from there, we're basically like playing Tetris to fill in gaps of making sure we have the diversity we need on that panel in terms of like who's coming from a city, who's coming from a county, who's coming from the nonprofit sector, and ensuring that it is a representative group for our COC. So MAG and those previous members sort of make the final call on who is part of that group. We get together and this group reviews the applications that get submitted for the NOFO. Rachel has been part of it many times, I'm sure could tell you all about those fun times. They use the scorecard that gets, here, let's move through here. So they use a scorecard that gets approved by you all to rank sort of in like hard numbers where projects fall. But we know that like that data alone and those outcomes aren't the only thing that is reflective of what necessarily we want to be funding in our community. So that's when these next two things become very important. There are applicant interview questions that get asked by the rank and review panel to applicants. And there is also this direction for priority listing. So these are like the top takeaways that you want the rank and review panel to be considering when they are going through those applications and determining, who really should be receiving this funding in our community. So you've already done the scorecard. That's great. It's these next two that we're really embarking on right now. And there is going to be some highly detailed information provided to you in an attachment in an email that you are going to receive after this meeting. We are hosting a meeting on August 12th to really decide what these priorities are going to be. Previously, it's happened, sort of in a standard monthly board meeting, but it's sort of been determined that wouldn't it be great if we had more time to really talk about this? You guys had time to brainstorm, you got this background information and you could step away and then think about it and put your notes somewhere. So the next steps look like brainstorming with a virtual whiteboard. So after this meeting, as I mentioned, you're going to receive a link to this. And this is a Miro board. They're pretty intuitive to use, but Dylan and I are definitely here to help walk you through it if you have any issues with accessing it or what to do with it. And it's basically going to lead you through the step 1, step 2, step 3 of having information on that memo that I mentioned in the previous slide, information from our current scorecards, information from the priorities you listed last year for the Rank and Review Collaborative. And it's going to have spaces for you to answer some questions that we laid out with some sticky notes and just throw it all out there. So this is adding your comments, adding some ideas, making sure you're responding to those outlined questions so that when we get to this meeting on August 12th, that's a moment where everything's going to be distilled down and finalized, and we're going to decide what those priorities are going to be and make sure that it is truly reflective of what the board wants and it's useful to the rank and review panel. So you all will have time to add all those comments. MAG staff will sort of distill them down and synthesize them so that there's some clear direction during that August 12th meeting.
I have a
And
question. I'm
Yes.
sorry on that. You said that the email will come today. Is that correct? Okay.
right after this meeting.
And then there will be a follow-up meeting on the 12th. Will that be in person or is that going to be a virtual?
That is a virtual meeting.
Thank you.
Yes. So the purpose really is to finalize that information, to make it as useful as possible to the rank and review panel. And we want to make sure that we allow the amount of time that's needed to reflect the importance of that task. And really your, as the board's like one of your main responsibilities in this NOFO process. So with that, as always, you can go to our website, you can check out the NOFO portal. You can even check out the portal training if you would like. And there's some HUD guidance around the NOFO as well that is always useful to look at. You can reach out to Dylan and myself for questions around this, but anything else to add? Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dylan and Cleo. We appreciate the update. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I do. I was just wondering if on August 12th, if we could kind of look maybe at last year's, just as a refresher of the priority listing and kind of the advice or the guidance that the board gave and how that affected the listing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, those previous priorities and the previous questions are included in that memo as well. So they can be used as a baseline for making the new determinations.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the board?
I'm just curious. So is that where, for instance, coordinated entry, the funding gets allocated, voted on? I mean, how is it decided who does the coordinated entry? I mean, how often does that go out from an RFP point of view?
Are you referring to like the entity that like serves as the coordinated entry lead agency?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a little separate from that.
Okay.
Funding is allocated to like the coordinated entry project that applies,
I see.
but it'll just be a renewal for the existing entities.
So an RFP process for a new coordinated entry would be a totally separate thing from our annual funding that is coming
I
from
see.
HUD.
Any additional comments or questions? All right, we'll move on to the next item. Next, MAG will provide an overview of the recently released HUD COC build competition and potential opportunities for local participation.
All right. Hi, everyone. Me again. This is really exciting. We have a new opportunity that's come down the pipeline from HUD, and not that, I've been in the COC super long, but I don't think we've really ever seen something like this come from HUD before. So here to just give an intro to what this is, the information we have so far, make sure everyone is aware of what's happening, and let you know sort of what we're thinking this is going to look like for our COC and our community. So we're going to overview the funding opportunity, go through a potential timeline that we're foreseeing this taking, and then talk about some immediate next steps for us. So some text from HUD for you to review, but basically this NOFO is different than our annual NOFO because it is for capital funding, most of it. It is for building physical capacity for PSH in our community, which again, I don't think we've really ever seen before. HUD has a lot of priorities outlined for this, so I'm going to go through some of them with you, really focusing on increasing affordable housing supply, ensuring access to supportive services and public services, and partnering with housing, health, and service agencies. Those are some three sort of policy overarching goals they have for this project. And then based on, like I said, the information they've provided to us so far, I'm also gonna walk through these like 5 sub priorities to give you an idea of what they're looking for here. So it's increasing housing opportunities, increasing the supply of permanent supportive housing units, encouraging coordination between housing providers, healthcare organizations, and social service providers, ensuring new PSH units are conveniently located near local services, so like walking distance from public transit or providing access to health services, really ensuring that it makes sense where this is happening. And then affirmatively furthering fair housing. And a reminder that this is PSH focused housing, so it has to accommodate and focus on those with high needs and members of households with disabilities. So that's sort of some of our framework. Next, some logistics and numbers for us. There is 175 million available nationally for this funding. HUD is anticipating about 25 awards given. So 25 COCs receiving awards for this money. Here, we are eligible to receive up to 10 million based on our current NOFO funding, our annual NOFO budget or allocation, puts us in this $10 million bracket. No more than 20% of the funds received for this can be used for things like rental assistance, operating costs, or supportive services. And I believe there's an additional 10% for admin costs, but the vast majority of this is going to construction and those capital funds. So pretty cool, pretty different. Something else to keep in mind is that the operation dates, the projected operation dates would be that October 25 through October 2030, which is a crazy future year to say out loud. Here are the eligible applicants. Something that also differentiates this from our annual funding process is that our COC is going to have a single applicant representing our COC. So it's not going to be like a group of applicants like we have for our annual funding that are ranked in a certain way. This is going to be a single application that will represent the Maricopa COC. So in that sense, you know, very different and means that things will look a little different for who we get to do that and who ends up being that single applicant that MAG as the COC lead submits to HUD. And
Claire,
just
who decides that?
we're gonna figure that out together, Michael, I think.
Is that like a $10 million award, or do you think it could be multiple?
It would be a single up to $10 million award for the Maricopa COC. So it's really gonna depend on how many people want to compete for that money in our region. It's not gonna look like, you know, multiple groups sending separate applications for pieces of that 10 million.
Can I ask a question to clarify that? So it could be more than one organization applying under one application.
Yes.
Okay.
So HUD has encouraged multiple, well, it would really be like sub-recipients under a single application. HUD has encouraged that. There's, you know, 10 million is probably not going to build an entire new PSH infrastructure for our region. So there's going to be braided funding most likely. And yeah, that's probably going to mean groups working together to figure out how we put out the strongest application for our region. And just to note, any for-profit entities are not eligible to receive directly or be sub-recipients for this.
This is Tish. I'm just wondering, how are you all going to put out requests for proposals for this application? Or are you going to invite organizations to just do a roundtable discussion around, you know, possible applications? I mean, how are you going to get this out to the broader community?
I will cover that in just a few slides, Tish. I'm just gonna get all of the sort of like basics of the funding opportunity out first, and then we'll talk about what those next steps look like.
You.
Okay, so talking about the application narrative, basically, this is like a 25-page total application, pretty short. Each of these narratives is up to 2 pages, and these are the focus areas that HUD is going to be asking about. Some other special considerations outside of these explicit narratives are new PSH units on tribal reservations or trust lands, as well as this nod to environmental justice that they get into in the funding opportunity that we can get into more a little bit down the line. But wanted to really highlight those 2 pieces because they're going to be awarding some extra points to those that are outside of the explicit rubric and application narratives for those considerations. But this sort of gives you an idea of what we would be writing for. HUD has provided an evaluation rubric for this as well. So they are telling us directly what they are evaluating each COC's application on. It's going to cover these 11 factors. Development experience and leveraging is bolded there because that accounts for 24 of the 100 points that HUD will be evaluating the application on. So as the COC board, just important to keep in mind that in order to put forward an application that will be most competitive nationally, we really want to be paying attention to these factors and making sure that it's an application that we know is going to score highly in these areas. Okay, let's think about timeline. So this is kind of small font, I apologize. This was released officially on Monday of last week. So I will have Dylan make a much more fun interactive timeline as we go down the line for us. But basically what we're seeing here is we know what's going to happen in this blue category. We know that we need to host some info sessions about this, and our staff are already working on gathering the information needed for that and scheduling those. And we know we're going to have to gather some sort of intent to apply or letter of interest forms to really understand what the rest of this process is going to look like. As a community, if we have a single group who is interested in applying for this, and we know that that's the group that has the strongest application, that makes the rest of this pretty simplified. If we have 5 groups that might have really strong potential of like best representing our community, then we need to figure out a full RFP process. We will have a panel review for those applications that would likely involve lots of board input and board members. And then a single group would be able to complete the full application that we would submit to represent us. So it really depends what the interest is in our community, how we want to go forward with this, and what type of input we get is going to determine what these next steps look like. But we know pretty much up until September, we're in the information gathering stage of this. So our immediate next steps are to schedule that info session. It's looking like it will likely be in the next 2 weeks. We will be facilitating a lot of the communication about this opportunity at MAG. So this is information on our website. This is the usual Gov delivery notifications. It's going to appear in our newsletter. So some of our standard communication outlets that we use. Other options could include like individual outreach, or what Tish was saying, like roundtable discussions, not just info sessions about this funding opportunity, but definitely welcome feedback on what that communication looks like. We will also be continuing to explore potential uses of this funding and really what this could look like in our community and what would best serve our community as well as compete nationally. So that we can, provide some of that support in TA through this process. And We're really hoping to finalize the application process and this timeline by the end of August when we have done that information gathering. So hoping by September, we will come back and be able to, speak more definitively about what this is looking like. The information so far is on grants.gov to get the full PDF of the opportunity and that full packet from HUD. There's also a HUD notice on their website. And you can contact us as well if you have any specific questions about this, but welcoming any at the moment.
Thank you, Cleo. Does the board have any questions, comments, or any additional discussion? Thank you. Oh, Liz. There you go, Liz.
Thank you so much. Excellent recap on that. I appreciate it. At Access, we are definitely interested in partnering with any interested providers and MAG on this. Noting the higher scoring you get for engaging healthcare institutions, we think we can do it at a high level within Access. The other thing on the COC builds, we do have some funds in our SMI Housing Trust Fund right now that can go in to help partner with some gap funding as well for COC builds. So I'm just thinking maybe MAG, myself, and then our SMI Housing Development Manager can be a part of those information sessions so that we can just share this information with whoever we're giving information to so we can come together to create an excellent application.
Thank you, Liz.
All right. Thank you, Liz. Any further discussion? This sounds like an incredibly exciting opportunity for our community. I haven't seen anything like that, but I think a lot of good partnership and collaboration could come out of this. So, all right, next up, we have Matt Kelly, who's the co-chair of the Coordinated Entry Collaborative. He's going to present on current efforts related to the COC strategic plan and the 2023 Coordinated Entry Evaluation, as well as the ongoing Coordinated Entry Assessment Tool pilot. Matt?
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys allowing us a little bit of time in the meeting today. I'll try and get through. We decided to kind of look through our strategic plan items that the board had created and just kind of give an update on each one of those and then finalize. I'll give you an update with regards to the new map assessment and where we stand with that. So if I could get the next page. So the first goal that's on the strategic plan is to integrate domestic violence data within the homeless response system. We have been reading, I believe, monthly now for about 18 months. And as of the last couple of months, we have created basically all 7 DV providers who are shelter providers are currently engaged in this process, as well as we've been able to work with Solari to create a monthly report that's now being shared with us at the monthly meeting by Solari. And it's kind of exciting. We have been able to show that of the individuals who participated in the coordinated entry process in DV shelters, 14% of them actually received some form of an intervention as part of that participation. I think we don't necessarily know what the history is on this, but I think this is a really great starting point, and we're excited to see all of that and pull that together. Kind of moving forward, some of the things we are going to be working towards is looking at the service-only providers that are in the DV community and bringing them into this process of reporting individuals who would be interested in participating in coordinated entry, as well as, I think, enhancing the training. We have some trainings that have been pulled together in the past, and I think we're working to pull together one through the LMS system. There's commonly a lot of staff overturn, and we want to make sure that there's a training opportunity with regards to that. So I think, and that of course takes participation with Solari, with MAG, and with the DV providers to make sure that it covers all the appropriate topics. Goal 2, evaluate access to the system across demographics to determine discrepancies and recommend policy changes. So this is, oh, that's a lot to say in one goal. However, I think one of the things that we look to is the coordinated entry evaluation, and we responded to all of the equity related findings from the home-based CE evaluation and kind of trying to look at those things and then determine what next steps we may or may not need to do. In reviewing the coordinated entry evaluation, what we found is a lot of the information that was supplied related to demographic discrepancies came from basically member feedback or client feedback in the community and staff feedback. So we decided to go ahead and create a resource within our community that's going to be monitoring the overall areas of geographic and demographic inequity within the system. So high level, what we're really looking at doing is pulling all of the PIT data, coordinated entry access points, as well as outreach teams and where they're engaging with individuals. And then also using the outreach viewer to determine where we do have service coverage in our system, where we don't have service coverage in our system. And then also if there are different populations that are not being served, how we can go to best do that and increase access to coordinated entry and also other services as part of that. Goal 3 covers a lot of different points. Increase access within coordinated entry, which I think kind of goes back to the last thing. We obviously have designed the MAP piloted tool and then completed a HUD assessment workshop. So part of that HUD assessment workshop is we had, I believe, 5 of us who were able to participate in that meeting regularly for about an 8 sessions over, I think, a couple of months. And as part of that, we received kind of like a tool that helps us to evaluate as we're going through the evaluation and implementing new things. Are we doing and going through all of the steps necessary to ensure that we're covering every aspect of the system from beginning to end? And so we've been using that tool as a way to kind of go back and analyze the work that we've done and then address any steps that we haven't done and kind of moving forward through those steps. And I think using that as kind of our guidepost to make sure that we're covering all of our bases with regards to that. Kind of what's up next with this is we do have pilot data and we're going to be working to analyze that pilot data for redundancy and equity. And then we're going to be also doing some feedback or getting feedback from users and members as well as that as it relates to the new MAP tool. And then we're going to be looking at all of that feedback and determining what the next steps are for rollout and implementation. That might require some additional edits and changes to the tool, but we're definitely looking forward to when we would be able to do a full implementation and what steps we might have to take to do that. I will be fully transparent in this. I think this has taken much longer than I would have originally thought it would have taken for us to get through this information, but I do think that we're doing it in a way that makes sense and I think is also measured and being thoughtful about the information so that we're not rolling out a tool into our community that's going to create more problems per se than maybe the VI Spit app would have. So, and then increase the percentage of assessed households on the BNO. Right now, we have a coordinated entry dashboard that tracks that on a regular basis. And I think really what we're looking to do here is work with the leads on this to determine how we can best roll out some process or information to different points within the system, whether it be shelter providers or outreach providers, to actually start addressing some of the individuals who have not been assessed in the system and how we can start to engage with those individuals, not only with just making sure providers know this, but then also how to help those individuals get connected with a coordinated entry access point within our overall system. Goal 3 continued. Expand culturally specific outreach to Black and Native Latinos. So I think with this, we are again looking at that tool that I kind of referenced in the last slide with regards to looking at access across our overall system, and we're going to be doing that mapping. And as part of that, we're going to be looking at race and ethnicity across our entire continuum to determine if there's areas where there is an underserved population and we need to maybe increase access to coordinated entry as well as outreach and considering what might need to happen there. And then we're going to be engaging our community centers, cultural hubs, and service providers to ensure equitable access. That's really looking at where in the community maybe has staff that we could engage who might be working with one of our underserved populations to be able to engage them and maybe make them an access point. Continuous improvement and oversight. Obviously, this is something that we're considering on a multitude of levels. I think first and foremost, we do have a coordinated entry dashboard, and that's been, I think, to start off with, was a little bit overwhelming because there's a lot more data than we were usually used to having available to us. And so we have been spending a little bit of time going through that coordinated entry dashboard and determining what are the key factors that we're looking at in our system, and then already working to set some, I think, guideposts, like where are we at today and where would we like to be at going forward, and improving on those things, and then start looking at what we might need to do to, implement some of those changes and improvements across the system. I believe we have 5 or 6 different access points that we are now kind of pulling, or excuse me, not access points. We have 5 different data points that we are pulling together to kind of then look at the historical over the last 12 months, see where things are at, and then set some initial goals with regards to improvement over the system. And then again, it's going to be planning another annual evaluation of the coordinated entry system. We need to be looking at that obviously every other year. They do a more formal one, so I think we're in the other year. So we'll be looking at what sort of an evaluation we need to be putting into place and getting that scheduled and on the books. Next step. Thanks. So with regards to the coordinated entry evaluation and the assessment tool, so we kind of talked about the best practices for the tool design, and I kind of referenced that. And I think we've been piloting the map tool as of January 1, 2024. We all know that. As of, I believe, April or May, we were able to pull together enough data to be able to do some sort of an evaluation on that. We had 2,000 plus assessments that were completed between the families and the singles. Two-thirds of the tool is automatically generated from the UDEs or HMIS, as well as there are 4 questions that are asked of the individuals. So we will be, and basically right now we've been working with ASHAC on that, and they've actually gone through, and I believe now have full access to the data that's necessary to do an evaluation. And it's my understanding that we should have some preliminary, if not pretty good data from them about the middle of August. So we're looking forward to evaluating that and seeing where we're at with regards to the map. That data that's coming back is going to do a couple of things. Number one, it's going to be evaluating the tool against itself, making sure that we're not asking questions that aren't getting at certain information that isn't redundant. And secondarily, we're going to be looking at it in comparison to the VI SPDAT to see where people are falling with regards to the new tool. That's kind of where we stand right now. We're kind of excited and kind of being cautious about saying too much more than that, but we're really excited to see what that data brings back so we can start looking at how we can move forward and kind of like either make some adjustments and changes and move forward in the community, or potentially look at implementation if at all possible. Excuse me. So obviously I kind of cover things that are not in the slides. So the next steps are we're going to review the ASHAC findings, compare the equity between the VI SPDAP and the MAP scores for the BNL top 100. And then we're going to be collecting feedback from the MAP users, not only members, but I think as well client and staff as their feedback with regards to that. And then we'll be revising the MAP tool based upon that feedback, and then do a second round of data. And then potentially we're hoping for a rollout with regards to that as well. Now, I think Richard is in the room, so I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be there today. Normally I would like to be in person, but I'm actually in Michigan, so here I am virtually. So any questions the group has?
I think I just had one. First of all, I just want to comment and say thank you for the update, Matt. Really appreciate the good work. It sounds like the committee, the coordinated entry committee, has been very busy. So I did have a question on, you said we're going to be evaluating the data, the equity between the VI and the MAP. Is there a timeline, an ETA on that?
Yeah, so that data from ASHAC is supposed to be coming back. Brian, quote me if I'm wrong, but I believe he said the 18th was the date that we've been given by ASHAC to be able to look at that. Guesses are that the coordinated entry, we have an assessment work group that will be reviewing that data within a week to kind of then bring that to the coordinated entry collaborative to decide if there's recommendations we want to make from that, or changes, or what we may or may not need to do.
Thank you, Matt. Does
anyone
else have any additional comment?
I do. This is Cricket. I wanted to thank Meg staff and all of the coordinated entry committee, collaborative members and our co-chairs. I want to just express to this board, this is deep work. Like it is, they're meeting twice a month. They're working all the time. It is deep, deep work. And there's a lot of nuances and details in it. And I invite you to join us at any time to really understand that we'll never in this room get it. So I think that you could all help provide great direction for this group by involving yourselves in any way possible. And I didn't tell anybody I was saying this, but I literally do appreciate the work that goes on. And it's because it's the front door, there is even within our group sometimes, some people think one thing, some people think another. So like trying to get to the best solutions and everything, I think the committee does a great job at doing that. And I wanted you all to know that you're welcome to come and learn about all things coordinated entry.
Thank you, Cricket.
Thank you, Cricket. I agree. I think that, right now I think I'm in meetings with coordinated entry 7 or 8 times a month, if not ad hoc meetings on top of that. So I think, that's a lot to ask, and I'm happy to do it because I think this is super important work for the community, but it is also, there's a lot of work happening. And I think it's just, as much as I'm a frying pan, if all of you know what that means. Like some people are frying pans and some people are slow cookers. Well, I'm a frying pan. So like this is the hardest thing for me to do, is to be super patient through all of this work. And I'm appreciative of all the people who are not frying pans, who forced this conversation to slow down so that it's super thoughtful.
Just to follow up, he's telling you that I'm a slow cooker.
I was not officially saying that. But I do want to thank everybody, including Meg staff, because this is a lot of time on their hands, on their parts as well. I think the amount of time you guys are doing, and I don't even know what other meetings you guys do outside of those meetings, which I'm assuming there's more. So I appreciate it.
Man, I hate to change this train of thought, but I have
No,
a
go for
question
it.
for you, Matt. You mentioned a lot of quantitative work, pulling the data. Are you all going to do any qualitative work about and around the conversations had with folks? How is the assessment delivered? How is it taken? I'm just curious about that because I know that was a huge concern with
You're
the VI.
Totally agree with you. And yes, so some of the focus groups that we're specifically having are going to be focused on the actual map tool and how that information is being asked, and also just the content or the questions that are being asked as well, and whether or not they make sense to the community and to the individuals receiving the questions. So absolutely, I think there's going to be some of that. It's just that the tool is going to be really focused on those 4 questions because there's very little, like, unlike the VI SPDAT, there's 4 questions versus, over 20. So, but yes, we will continue to do that.
Thank you, because delivery is important.
I fully agree with you. And I know that we created some script with regards to the map tool. And I think we used the original VI SPDAT language and made a number of modifications for that. But obviously part of the conversation will be if we need to make those modifications, and also if we need to make modifications to the questions that are being asked, because they just either don't make sense or they aren't tracking per se.
Can I also add, this is Brian at MAG. We've got some data, Tish, that Amy Schwab and Lender sent over to us just on the demographic breakdown of folks who answered yes or no to the 4 questions, the oral questions that are asked on the map tool. So we're still kind of waiting for ASAC to do their data work. And the plan is to go back and then evaluate some of that stuff. So just so you know, we've got all that with us, and we're going to be taking it into account. And then if I can go back just to the kind of feel good stuff that Matt was saying before, which it's really nice to hear all of that. And thanks, Cricket, for the shout out, because the team has been working really hard on this. I would just say one of the things that we're trying to do is really track back all of the effort that's gone into this. One thing I want to highlight, in case it doesn't get mentioned before, is, we did this HUD work group, and just part of the goal there was to get feedback. Are we on the right track? We have never developed a coordinated entry tool before, right? So to have a sense of whether or not we're even moving in the right direction was kind of tricky until we got a sense from other communities that they're doing exactly what we're doing. So we'll probably have more to say on that, but I wanted to highlight that we ran this by a lot of folks who do TA on this all the time. And they all said, look, this is a good looking tool. You got to, finalize it and do some testing on it, but you're in the right direction. So that meant a lot to us, at least.
Thank you, Matt.
That's great to hear. That's really great to hear.
So I have a question, Brian. The tool that you've used, is that constantly getting assessed, or where's the feedback go?
Great question. So the places where they are using this tool, they're asking these questions, and in addition to the VI SPDAT questions. So as they're doing assessments at Keys to Change and UMOM, they've been sort of piloting this. As you may remember, that's how we kind of launched it back in January now, maybe earlier this year. And then they've been collecting data since then. So the data really is just what did people answer on the tool, who answered it, who said yes, no. I think Richard Southey, who's a key member of the team, made a suggestion to review those numbers against who hasn't answered it. So can we look at who answered the VI SPDAT and who but didn't answer this tool? So things like that are being tracked kind of continually. But we have not, to Tish's point, really broken any of that down yet. What we've been looking at, first of all, is just the questions on the tool itself. Like, do these make sense? Do they tell us what we want to know?
And then Matt, I had a question. You said that there are going to be focus groups around that. And then just out of curiosity, these will be participant focus groups, and how will you identify the participants to ensure?
Yeah, both lead agencies have agreed to create the focus group. So they're going to be working, and I believe UMOM was going to be doing just UMOM. And I think, don't quote me here, but Keys to Change might be doing Keys campus as well as maybe one or two larger CE providers, just to get a better sense. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's a mic.
Just to answer, I think, both of those questions in a little bit more detail real quick. So, I'm Richard Southey, so I'm Matt's counterpart for coordinated entry. The data review process is iterative because of how this population works. So the population we see in May is going to be very different than the population we see in November, for example. And so we're collecting the data and reviewing it iteratively, and then we'll be able to look at it all at once and see, okay, based off of the information in one time frame and the other time frame, what does this mean for us as we're operating year round? And then also the focus group data we'll be able to be compared against what came up in the evaluation that we had done with Homebase. So we'll have Homebase's findings, and then we'll have our findings from the focus group. So that will also be an iterative process, because we'll be able to compare them side by side. So not only will the feedback tell us, okay, this is what they think about MAP, but this is what they think about the MAP tool in comparison to the VI SPDAT. So both of those processes will be iterative, both the qualitative and the quantitative aspects of it.
I just had a follow-up question in relation to the focus group number, to make sure, is there a set number that you're going to have to ensure you have a representative sample and feedback from the participants?
I believe Natalie and I are meeting tomorrow to talk about exactly that.
Thank you.
So our board's wicked smart, and we brought Richard on to handle all the data stuff, and Natalie, who has taken over most of this work from Mag.
All right. Thank you all very much. Next up, the Arizona Housing Coalition legislative update. The coalition will share the latest about the 2024 legislative priorities.
Thank you. It's Jamie Podratz here joining, and my colleague, Executive Director Nicole Newhouse, is also on here, but she had to join by phone due to technical issues. So if it's okay, Nicole, I'll just start off with just a very brief I wanted to share just a tiny update on some activities at the coalition. We had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. for a Capitol Hill Day effort that was held kind of in collaboration with the National Alliance to End Homelessness gathering that was there. And we were able to see, I was able to see a lot of you there at that event. It was great to see you and reconnect with our Arizona folks. And part of the Capitol Hill Day effort was really coordinating meetings and getting our folks, our Arizona folks who are working on the ground, into face-to-face meetings with our congresspeople. And we were able to schedule meetings with Senator Mark Kelly and his staff, as well as Representative Ruben Gallego, Representative Greg Stanton, and Representative Juan Ciscomani. So it was a nice array of folks throughout the state on our delegation, as well as our congressional representatives. We were really there to highlight just a few things. And one of them was just asking for FY25 budget increases, specifically around the homeless assistance grants, the HAG funding, and to also relay the continued importance of funding under LIHTC and other federal supports for affordable housing development, homelessness assistance programs, and then also re-examining the housing choice vouchers allocations and ensuring that Arizona and other communities kind of in this western part of the country are being advocated for, and just sharing that need that we have across our communities. Because we had that statewide representation in our delegation, one of the powerful pieces that emerged was the 26,000 household wait list that they've got in Pima County for housing choice vouchers. That was kind of a universally surprising stat, I think, to hear, and kind of put into context the vast need. That's just one community in one part of our state. And so we made some progress in terms of getting that face-to-face time. We had really positive reception to advocating for funding level and increasing in some of these critical supports for COCs, emergency services grants, other pieces. And, you know, I just got an update today that the Senate Appropriations Committee did pass through a bill that had about a 10% increase for funding under the transportation, housing, and urban development piece. So that's great news, but recognizing that at the federal side, they're on a fiscal year that ends October 1st. There's not a lot of hope or anticipation in DC that they're going to come to a fiscal year 25 agreement before that time. So we're kind of just in the waiting game. But it was a great chance to have folks from like Home Inc., Justice Center, have some face-to-face time and share just the vast need and critical importance of federal support. And then I can open it up for questions now or hand it over to Nicole for some more updates on other legislative priorities and what we've got going.
I'm just going to let everybody ask any questions that they may have.
I believe we're good on this end, Nicole.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Sorry, I can't be on camera. I've gotten a new computer, which I can't figure out some new bugaboos with the settings. So we are working to get reactivated internally now that legislative session is over and planning for next legislative session. Wanted to let everybody know a couple of things as we make our way through our planning process. As everybody knows, the grants pass decision has come. What we're doing is we are going to be coalescing a group of stakeholders that can really be thought partners in identifying what policies that we could put forward that would preempt a Cicero or Common Sense Institute type piece of legislation out there so lawmakers have alternative choices. What we recognize with Grants Pass is we knew that decision was never going to solve homelessness. And what we all know is that all of our cities and towns are working hard to avoid having to arrest their way out of our challenges. But what they're missing are resources to do what they need to do. So what we really want to do is identify not a huge omnibus, it's going to solve everything sort of way we can attack it, but something that is powerful and measurable and doable, that really does address some of the issues. So we're going to be looking to coalesce some folks likely in September. In addition, we have added a lobbyist to our team, former lawmaker Steve Kaiser, in order to build a Republican caucus on housing and homelessness. So that is where we are headed. If anybody wants to join or has any questions, I am open and desirous of feedback and participation.
Thank you, Nicole. The only, this is Vicki. I just had a quick question. You said you are going to coalesce a group. How will that information get out? Is it just sending you an email? How would that information be shared for anyone interested in participating?
If they want to, just send an email to me, Nicole, Nicole, at azhousingcoalition.org, expressing an interest. And we're going to probably hold several groups. It'll start with collecting information and then kind of identifying what that thing could be. So yes, please just ping me with an email.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Anything from the public? Nicole, Jamie, thank you all very much for your advocacy, for the work, and for the group that you're going to be coalescing on such an important topic.
A pleasure. We really appreciate everybody's partnership.
Thank you. All right. The next item is related to the All Inside initiative. We have Captain Kent Ford. He's the team lead for Phoenix Mesa Maricopa County region, and he's going to be presenting on this item. Take it away.
Thanks, Dr. Phillips, and to the group. Thanks for allowing me some time today. Yeah, so about 10 minutes or so, specifically, I was asked to talk a little bit about the convening that a number of our team went to, and then also some general updates and some specific kind of marching orders forward of what is kind of on the horizon for us. So in that convening, basically we had Natalie and Matt here and Dr. Phillips, Margaret from the team at Phoenix, and then Delmar from the Mesa community. So I had a nice cross-sectional group that was able to participate. Next slide. But before I dive kind of into that, just as a reminder of what is on my blueprint for oh, great, thank you. For the All Inside program, basically has 6 goals as are kind of on my marching orders. Coordination, and I'm doing that mainly through the monthly newsletter that goes out. And certainly there's other requests for information, and I pass that through and get that out as quick as I can. Supportive services, largely a highlight there is the SAMHSA grant that really came about from the All Inside program. So, and thinking about supportive services with my connections with health centers, Circle the City, ensuring that they're getting what they need, and also other SAMHSA grantees, the PATH program and whatnot, supporting them in their efforts. Encampment guidance, this is something that we worked with Home Base to try to get that out for folks as a TA opportunity, but certainly open for other things that might be needed in that space. That is on the list. Waivers and regulatory relief. It's been a little tricky to get this one over the hump, and I know all of our other all inside teams have had their different struggles. Seattle and Chicago don't have any, as well as Phoenix. Dallas has been our leading North Star. They've got about 6 or so. So looking to partner more with them and perhaps have some other mutual way to work with them on ways forward. Reimagining programming, there's the different thing build as comes to mind with that, and other things. There's other ARPA-H, the in alignment with the cancer moonshot. There's some interesting innovation in the health space on what can we do about opioids and reducing the impact on emergency care. So there's some work in that space, and certainly open for other ways we can press go. If you see something interesting, I can help to try to either bridge that or we can kind of think about that in other ways. It's certainly important, and certainly the funding gap of what, when ARPA goes away, what that looks like. And then the last one is tribal organizations, and I've been focusing mainly on Indian Health Service and the PIMC, or the Phoenix Indian Medical Center, working with them on their needs. But also then there's the National Native American Veteran Homelessness Program that I've also been working with them, and that's a White House initiative, ensuring they've got their gaps covered and filled mainly. So next, oh yeah, I got the thing here. Okay, so back to the convening. On the 26th and 27th as Advanced Housing, Health, and Social Care Partnerships. And one thing, Nicole, I think in my notes, I think you mentioned a housing and homelessness work group in September that Steve Kaiser might be working on. I would certainly think about adding health to that conversation, not only because I work in the Health and Human Services, I might be a little biased, but there's been more social determinants of health and health-related social needs than ever before. So I think definitely, as we get social determinants kind of figured out and have like big players like CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, come to bat and pay for services like social determinants, that we might be able to continue that effort. But there's definitely a lot of ripe crop for kind of harvesting on what the health sector can bring to the table with this as well. And social determinants are so important, of course. But at the convening, a lot of plenary sessions, breakout sessions, and networking. And that was just the great, I think, part of it was having that opportunity with 3 different cohorts. And I'll talk about a little later about the 3 cohorts that were there. But specific highlights that were there, they have a lived experience panel. That was great to hear directly from people that were being supported through these different programs. There were participant panels, people from our area was able to participate and be leaders. And that segues into the city and state leadership and interaction. Just had a lot of cross-pollination there of programs. Main highlight, I think, was from Dr. Kushel from San Francisco. And we did circulate her presentation to the group. And I think there's just a lot of information there and continues to be. And I think she's just a leader in thinking about research and what, very kind of great approaches to think about how we are thoughtful about our approach to anything homelessness related. There were federal leadership there from the Domestic Policy Council, White House, leadership from HHS, from HUD, Richard Cho, Jeff Olivet, my supervisor at USICH, I guess, as I am detailed under him, and the like. So a great kind of leadership opportunity there to touch base with those folks. And then there was a lot of interest in climate and heat, and obviously they looked to Phoenix. And we did share that information, and thank you, Rachel, for following up with some very specific to Phoenix information. So that was shared with the larger group, and that continues to be something that has kind of people in different cities have certainly thought of, not only of LA and Dallas, but the northern tier of Seattle and Chicago, and Denver's kind of in the middle. But they're all very interested in kind of what's happening here and how they can learn from us. So that continues to be a big thing. And HUD has been very interested in what's happening in that space as well. And we've been sharing information as we can. So I talked about the folks that attended, and those 3 housing and health groups were from all inside, of course, the 6 cities in 1 state, the Housing and Services Partnership Accelerator that Liz knows a lot about and has been getting a lot of interest in and great TA and technical assistance on that. And then there's a Health and Housing Institute, which is HRSA sponsored, where I came from for 11 years at HRSA. And actually, this is the 3rd cohort, but the 2nd cohort included Arizona. So you certainly, from all inside, you're part of it. From Housing and Services Partnership Accelerator, you're part of it. And the Health and Housing Institute, they've learned a lot in growing into that 3rd cohort. So you should be very proud that Arizona has been well represented at these things. But I think it also lends just, how good you guys do your business. So, I think there's something to say for where you guys are, what you contribute to the country with the things that you do in this space. So good on you for that. And a couple of pictures. I'm not sure if you can see this, a little bit tricky maybe if you're online. The upper left hand is Liz. She's able to be, she's presenting. She was states lead the way. Arizona was on top with Liz presenting in that panel. If you can really squint your eyes, you can see an Arizona table there on the lower left, and you can see Margaret and some others. And then also on the lower right, there's Natalie and Margaret and some others there. There's Delmar. So just proof that there's roughly I think 150 folks there. I might be off by a few tens, but it was a great opportunity to convene and network. So hopefully there's some further on opportunities to just share information. So I wanted to change gears then into that futuristic kind of the next step with All Inside, and just refresh that waiver process. So as we've learned, they didn't have anything like this before. This is the first of its kind, right? So they also had first of its kind waiver. There was not a template to go off of. Well, we've kind of figured out what things that they need in order to get across the finish line. And it really is in this 4 steps. So if you have a big title, what's the issue? And then dive into the problem is the next section of this. Further explanation where you really get to that hindering problem. What's that hiccup? And try to get some data around it. And then the very concise request. Where is it coming from? What's the source of the funding? Where is it in a code of federal regulations, or what is it exactly that we want to be waived? So those are the 4 things that seem to be what the Dallas example of getting about 6 across the finish line, what they've been able to show. And through this process, then we can get the next one, right? So that's what we're hoping to do. And I do have a Survey Monkey that has those 4 things spelled out that we just simply, there's the link, and then we can put those information things in, and then we can kind of flush that out into an actual document from those 4 components. So I'm definitely here to help kind of problem solve and work our way through that. But that's the way I think moving forward that we can kind of get that onset of just very specifically what the issues are that we can work on together. Okay, and then the last 3 slides are just some things actually John Ellinger, after he presented a month or so ago, I actually had a couple conversations, and with Brian thought about what might be some very specific things that we can, kind of put up on the top of the list, not knowing that I have those 6 things that we're trying to fall within on those 6 goals. But this is something that, again, seems to be things moving forward that we can work on and have specifically, some tangible outcomes from. So with the data sharing, that seemed to be something that John was very interested in. And I think there was something early on from our work with the emergency rental assistance that we have an opportunity to have that as a thing to cross the finish line. So just know that that's something that is on the list. And I'm working with John to get that flushed out as well as Brian. The next bullet down says the PHAs, again, they've largely been the vehicle for those existing waivers, specifically with the Dallas example and a couple that got passed. There's 2 from Denver, and that just recently happened. I know Natalie and Matt, if you recall, when Denver talked about their experience, that actually is an expedited public and Indian housing PIH side, have kind of put that on the table to acknowledge that these waivers, not only for this All Inside, but that's something that they've tried to use that experience to get better at. So they've expedited that. And I'll flush out exactly what Denver did in the next slide. But so they're not blanketed. And I think that might have been, I was hoping that when I first came in, that it'd be a little easier to blanket these waivers, but that isn't, it is specific with what they need. And I wish it kind of could have been blanketed, but it doesn't turn out to be that way. It's got to be specific and have that justification. And then the last one, Jason Poo, the regional regional administrator for HUD, he has had very kind of a specific kind of a pet project of presumptive eligibility. So that's something that he's very interested in and helped through other partnerships in LA got to get that past the finish line. Dallas took that on and has, I think, either got it very close or has got it past the finish line. So that's just called an example of streamlining and aligning federal benefits to, and have that as a client-centric lens of how we can get that done. And certainly thinking about what are the things outside of the scope of just that HUD lens, but in USDA and HHS and so on and so forth. So that's an example, I think, of what we can build on and move into the future if that seems to be in alignment with what we might need here. Okay, so this is an example of there's 2 slides left here. So this is working, and again, with the fair market rent of what Denver just passed. And there's kind of a 2-step here with what they did with Denver. So they established an exemption for the fair market rent of up to 120% of their FMR. So that's what it was. There's the CFR, and they had it very specifically laid out that HUD then could take a look at, review their information, and then press the easy button and say, yes, this is your waiver, here you go. And the second one, the PHA may increase the payment standard for a family at any time after the effective date of increase rather than waiting for the regular reexamination. So again, that's something that they've were able to take a look at and have that CFR to back it up and know exactly what they wanted waived. And those went, quote unquote, through the expedited waiver process through PIH. So if that's an example, doesn't have to be that same thing, but it could very well, again, live in those PHA kind of efforts. I know this is a COC and a COC audience, but that partnership and kind of leaning on our PHAs perhaps to help us get some waivers that would be helpful for our community is something that we can look at and perhaps do. And then the last one, again, Liz, again, very much has this, the bull by the horns with the Medicaid, but that is something I've sent around to so many people about what's happening with that. There's a lot of questions that come up, a high level of interest, and certainly they're in the accelerator program. Just know that that's, I'm here to help at any way I can, but also I'm here to more be almost, I see myself as a communicator and a connector with my role. So I'm hoping that I can still play that or, enhance that in any way I can, but just know that that is something that my HHS family is very much interested in and taking us, hopefully they're successful so we can take it to that next step, whatever that is in the next, in the future. And certainly the strategic plan that Matt talked about, a lot about domestic violence in the system. I know Brian has shared that that's something that I could maybe help thinking about technical assistance. Chicago has some examples of not exactly this, but they've worked a lot with their DV information in Chicago. So I would kind of thinking about how I could work with Chicago to think about how they've been working in the DV space and bring that to in one way, shape or form to the audience here. And then there's also an option for people with a history of eviction. That seemed to be something that has rose to the top of a list of things to work on. I happen to live in Alexandria, Virginia. They've done they've kind of been on a national stage of what they've been doing with eviction. So I close to home where I live, could kind of peel those folks in, maybe have a sister city in terms of what they've done and perhaps bring that at least their example to us to see what they maybe have done in that space to be a helpful worker and reducing the impact of eviction. And I think that's all I have for slides. So happy to answer any questions or, reflect on anything else that you guys want to ask me.
I'd just like to say thank you very much. It's very informative. How many people went to the conference?
So I think the convening, about that 150 or so. I mean, those 3 different cohorts of folks. There's 4 in that health and housing initiative from HRSA. There's only 4 states there. Okay. There's 6 cities in one state, California, and all inside the Chicago, Dallas, Phoenix, and Mesa, and Maricopa, Denver, Seattle, LA. I think I've got it recovered in the state of and then there's I think about 8 and Liz might have the latest information about 8 states represented in that the accelerator. Yeah, of course.
Any additional comments or feedback?
Just a question. Any chance that we'll get additional points on the PSH NOFO by being a part of the All Inside initiative?
That's something that I mean, even talking with Brian, I know we've mentioned that perhaps this is just raise the visibility of what's happening here to a level that I don't know if there's gonna be points, but I think that raising of the visibility has been helpful. But that's something I can, kind of look for and see if I could I put in the good 2 cents every time I can about what's happening here. That's for sure.
How did Liz do in her presentation?
She knocked it out of the park.
I was going to comment on that. Liz did amazing. Liz was out there asking those tough questions that nobody wanted to ask, and Liz had no problem getting out there and doing what she needed to do to get the information.
Yeah.
So kudos to Liz for the work she did.
I will say, not only on her panel, but when there's presenters and other my Fed family up there, she wasn't bashful about asking them some tough questions. So way to go, Liz, for sure.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Just have one additional comment about that. I would say that it was fantastic to hear what a lot of the other states were doing and how far they had gone in terms of the Medicaid and how they were infusing some of those systems. I think also, if anybody hasn't seen the study by Dr. Kushel, it's fantastic. I think a study like that in our community could go a long way, especially if we're having to speak to legislators and people about truly our community. It was fantastic. So it was a great experience.
If you have, again, I've connected with Dr. Kushel and some of her team. If you think of something that could be a building block to have, that's going to make the case, or, maybe we can think about what that might be, because I think she brings a lot of weight as a national expert to the table, and she's just up the road in San Francisco, certainly a Region 9, whatever that might look like. But that is I think that's a good idea.
This is Cricket. It'd be fascinating to talk to the Action Nexus about that kind of a
Deep dive.
deep dive.
Thank you. And thank you for your support in that endeavor, of course. All right, next up, we have MAG staff will provide updates on ongoing collaborative applicant duties and projects, including remaining COC board questions from the point in time count, COC board membership, recruitment, emergency shelter, RFP, and other recurring tasks. That was a mouthful. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Hey, everybody. I wanted to start out by saying thank you, co-chairs, for giving me a chance to give an update. So we're a little overdue providing feedback on a couple of questions that came up in May, I believe, about the point in time count. So that was part of the impetus to just have kind of an update session. In addition to that, we are working kind of behind the scenes on a lot of the kind of continual ongoing board work, and felt it was time to give you an update just on where we're at with some of these things. You've heard about the NOFA already. That's the big one. But in addition to that, as you may know, it's time to recruit a few folks for our board. We have 14 members now. We can have up to 18. So we will be starting recruitment next month. Expect that to wrap up by September. We're looking for some combination of community seats, policy advocacy, representatives, funders, and definitely persons with lived experience, including youth with lived experience. So folks in the TAY age range would be really, really good to have more representation on our board, as always. Let's see, wanted to talk real quick, just to say, the governance charter, we're going to need to update that as we do every year. Typically, we're starting that process in June. We've held off a little bit on that, partially because of the award that we received for YHSI, which has a lot to say about youth involvement and things like the board. So we wanted to take a look at that and see if there's any way that we can provide updates on that within the charter. And then lastly, annual gaps analysis. We typically do this in September. You can expect an update on the process that we'll be using. That'll be in August, most likely. So next question, this is related to the point in time count questions that came up. The two questions were, well, start with the first one. How did we have 4,000 persons counted approximately when we only did, we did fewer surveys than people counted, is what it came down to. And the answer is that we use an extrapolation in the city of Phoenix. That extrapolation is based on a methodology developed back in 2005 that we've been using consistently since then. And probably won't get into the details of it, but generally speaking, those numbers don't sync up. So we typically do more surveys, fewer surveys, than we have people counted as a result of that. And so just wanted to provide that context. I'm also very happy to get down in the weeds with anybody who wants to know how the extrapolation is done. So we took the time to kind of check in with our data team and the city of Phoenix on how that works. So happy to share that if you want to know more. The other thing about the point in time count was that we removed several questions, 10 to be exact, from the 2023 count. These generally related to folks' causes of homelessness, and also their willingness to go into shelter, their perceived willingness to access shelter. There are very good reasons for asking those questions. What we've kind of determined is relayed in May is just that the point in time count is not typically the best way to get that data. So we took these off in favor of making it a shorter, more concise survey, hoping that the numbers would go up. And if you'll remember, they did go up. So we're happy to see that. I think as we see those numbers continue to increase, hopefully, we may be able to introduce more of these questions back into the survey. But I think the bottom line is we need a reliable source of data before we build on top of that with additional questions. If you want to see this in a different format outside of this presentation, I'm happy to send over 2023 and 2024 survey tools. So the next thing is that we decided last month that we were going to have a strategic planning work group to meet outside of the board meeting. We did that, and I think we made some decisions or had a very good discussion at the very least. So that was on the 19th of July. We essentially the group that met recommended finding external help for a strategic planning process this year leading into 2025, and really looking at making some updates, looking at what we've accomplished and maybe in some cases haven't accomplished going into that new planning session. We're trying to figure out ways to leverage current TA that we have through MAG. So we're working with some HUD TA on system planning stuff and things like that. Unclear still if we'll be able to leverage any of that. If not, we have some plenty grant funds set aside for TA that we'll be able to use. And then lastly, we'll be setting up an additional time to meet to be determined. And then last update, we got a request from the town of Paradise Valley to help with an RFP, just as we did last year. That RFP would provide $200,000 for an emergency shelter operator operating in the vicinity of Paradise Valley. So typically they're looking specifically City of Phoenix or Scottsdale, and they would like to fund somebody to just help fund a service provider doing that type of work. So MAG is helping to facilitate that. That RFP will drop in August, most likely. We're getting the final RFP language approved. And then once that's done, we will be convening a panel to take a look at the results. And, we'll be reaching out to members of the board to gauge interest on sitting on that panel. And yeah, and that is the end of the updates. So thanks very much. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate the update. Does anyone have any additional questions, feedback, any points of discussion relative to what Brian presented?
So Brian, enhancing the strategic plan, that you're going to try and get some outside consultant to do that?
To work with that group, I think.
Okay.
The idea would be to have somebody who can kind of help guide that conversation. We heard during the last strategic planning process that just a little bit more kind of formal process would be helpful.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brian. All right. Next up, we have the request for future agenda items. Anybody have any additional items, any upcoming agenda items they would like to see? I do. Thank you. I was just hoping maybe at the next meeting, perhaps we could have an update on one of the other committees and their progress toward the strategic plan, perhaps data committee, if we think that would be a good place to start. Good. All right. Last item, board roundtable. I want to open the floor for any roundtable announcements, events, challenges, anything that you would like to address, any opportunities to come together for a new idea. Do any board members have any ideas or thoughts that they would like to discuss?
I just want to announce that we have selected a builder for the 30 additional units that we'll be building behind East Valley Men's Center. And we should be breaking ground within the next 60 to 90 days.
Thank you, Mike. That's always good news.
It is.
Ms. Liz DeCosta.
That's awesome, Mike. Congratulations. Very exciting to hear. You serve such an important role out there. So good. And I can't hear you if you said something, but I think I saw you.
Gonna have you come do the presentation.
Yeah. Well, it might be nice, might be a nice fit in with our enhanced shelter model, the with H2O. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that we are continuing on with our plans for go live October 1 of 2024. So a lot of work taking place over the next few months to prepare for us to implement the housing and health opportunity services. What we've decided is that we will use our existing oh, looks like the chat's disabled, but we'll use our existing community presentations to share information with providers. So we have our next scheduled session on August 19th, 2024. I'll provide Brian with a link to the Access website so that this can hopefully go out with the notes, Brian, but folks can just click on the link and then it will lead you to all of the Access community presentations. So each of those has its own flyer. You can click the flyer and it'll tell you exactly what we're going to go over in that session. But on August 19th, we are going to be introducing Solari as our H2O program administrator for the state, and then talking about their work to focus on provider enrollment over the next couple of months, where to go if you have questions, next steps for provider enrollment. So pretty big deal. The other thing we're going to talk about is our rates team determined our rate for our outreach and education services. So they're going to discuss that rate with the community. And then similar to what we did with the enhanced shelter, provide the community with 2 weeks to provide feedback to the rate. So that's August 19th. And as I mentioned, I'll send it out to Brian. There's going to be a website you can go on to link to register. Thank you.
Go ahead. I had a question.
No, I don't have the roundtable.
Oh, you have a round table.
Yes. So I just from the city of Phoenix wanted to announce that we opened our 140 bed shelter on July 17th in partnership with CVI. And that's phase 1 of a 280 bed shelter. We plan on opening phase 2 closer to 2025, but we were really happy to get 140 beds open in the heat of the summer. And then we have 2 other non-Phoenix projects, but Phoenix funded, North Mountain Healing Center and St. Vincent de Paul's DePaul Manor opening next month. So really happy to have shelter capacity as we're, at 113 today. So.
Thank you. Liz, if you don't mind, thank you, Rachel, for the update. Any other additional updates? Roundtable, anything? Liz, I just have a follow-up question to you. You had mentioned outreach and education.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little on that for just a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were approved in our 1115 waiver authority to be able to cover outreach, which is new for Medicaid, but CMS still approved it under our infrastructure budget. So we're going to be funding it more with like an administrative mechanism approach as opposed to claims billing. That's a lot of information, but what we've done though, so we're going to make sure that during initial rollout, it's very targeted. It will not be like a standard patient-centered medical home that can bill for outreach yet. That'll be the future goals after we demonstrate effectiveness, but it'll be more closely to like a path team where we have a team throughout the state of Arizona that is targeted to go outreach members who are likely eligible for H2O. So they'll get a list from our H2O program administrator of member names who are likely eligible but are not engaged. They'll actually go out into the community to find those members, perform outreach practices. We're going to try to standardize with the COC outreach standards as well. But we've built out a price per FTE model to try to, again, cover total cost of care needs for providers. So rather than, submitting actions to bill for each service, those providers would receive a monthly price per FTE reimbursement. And that's the rate we're going to discuss in the August 19th session.
Thank you, Liz, for clarifying, because I for a moment, I thought maybe they had opened the outreach code and that it was something that could be billed, but that's not the case. Now, will the outreach team, will those be providers who are doing the outreach? How will that process work a little bit?
Yes, yeah. So even though it's under our administrative infrastructure dollars, we want the direct service community providers performing the work. So an example is if you're a municipality and you provide outreach services right now, If you were interested in focusing some of those efforts on this targeted population, you could create a new line of business where you have a specific set of staff members who are going to outreach members with a 1 to 25 caseload ratio and get a list of members who are likely eligible, and they would go out into the community and conduct outreach services to engage that member, develop relationship, and then connect them in with the overall service. And then you would be reimbursed through Medicaid for that line of business, even a municipality. And that contractual agreement would be between the H2O program administrator and the municipality. Or if you are a not-for-profit, and you perform outreach services, similar thing to a municipality, you could create a new line of business that would focus on the specific population.
Thank you for clarifying that, Liz.
Absolutely.
All right. Any additional questions or comments before we close? Thank you to everyone who took the time to present today. We appreciate the information you provided and the updates. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.